Hi everyone, my name's Chris Ingham from the VRQA. Welcome to the Reviews and You information session. We've got about 10 people in the room, maybe 15. We've also, we think, got over 100 people streaming in from home. So, look, what we're going to do here is just talk about the VRQA review, homeschooling review process for those of you who've been lucky enough to be selected for review, or just for those who have general interest because they might be selected in future years. And what we're going to do for those of you present here, we'll be able to ask questions at any time, and we'll try to answer them. And I understand that those who are viewing online can ask questions through a speech bubble icon on the webcast page, and we'll try to address any questions at the end of the session. If we don't get time to answer all questions, we will do so after the session, because the plan is to publish this video on the VRQA website. So I hope that makes sense. I'd like to introduce and acknowledge we've got all but one of the VRQA homeschooling team here. So apart from myself, it's Chris O'Sullivan. We've got Marie Isaacs, Sarah Calling, and Kelly. Sorry. I'd also like to acknowledge we've got two members of the what's called the VHIAC, the Victorian Home Education Advisory Committee. And they wear other hats too. Sue White and Faye Croker are here as well. So for those of you who are lucky enough to be here, after the session is finished, we're going to have some afternoon tea. And if you want to stick around and ask any questions you want of anyone, you're more than welcome to, or just for a chat. Okay, all right. So I'll get on with it. I'm going to give an introduction, and then Chris O'Sullivan is going to take over and get into a little more detail about the review process. So it's great to be here at the State Library. It was quite nostalgic for me walking up the stairs. I was just thinking 30 years ago in my final year of school, I used to have this plan to go to the domed reading room to get a lot of study done to prepare for exams, and I'd sort of come in and it'd be all set up. But instead of studying, I'd do things like, we had this thing where you put little bits of paper in pens to make spitballs and do it. Yeah, anyway, maybe it should have been homeschooled, but anyway. Look, basically, to cut to the chase, what I'm talking about today is pretty much just an extension of the roadshow information late last year. So late last year, a number of people in this room were involved in about 14 or 15 sessions around Victoria, which talked about the new regulations, which talked about the new application and learning plan process, and about reviews. This is going to be pretty consistent with that, but focus on reviews in more detail. And so, yeah, so we'll talk about reviews so far, the process, exactly what is it that we're looking for, and how can you provide it, and what happens after the assessment. But let me give you an update of where we're actually up to. So far, as of now in June, the team in here, we've completed about 40 reviews, and there'll be another 40 or 50 that are just starting. We'll talk about these different types of methodologies, desktop, hang on, I've got a pointer, desktop, phone and home visits, but you can see the breakdown there. And I guess the headline news is that today all reviews have been successful and none have been unsuccessful. And it's also probably worth mentioning is that although 40 is a reasonably small number, we've done enough to be able to say we've looked at material which encompasses a range of different teaching and learning and philosophical approaches, from highly structured to unschooling to eclectic to faith-based, of different faiths, so on and so forth. And they've all got through which is consistent with the message that I'll get into in a minute that we were talking about at the roadshows last year. Under the homeschooling regulations, you don't have to follow any particular teaching and learning approach. You choose the teaching and learning approach. You don't have to follow the Victorian curriculum. You don't have to follow the Australian curriculum. You don't have to use the word curriculum. What we're after is evidence that there's some sort of education program in place that, taken as a whole, covers 8 learning areas. And people were sick of me saying that line last year in the roadshows. But you know what I mean? I just think it's confirmation that if you, it's easy for me to say because I'm not being reviewed, I'm the reviewer, but if you are worried that, oh, I've got a particular educational approach, will that be disadvantaged under the regulations? I'm pretty confident the answer to that is no. Anyway, we can talk more about that. I want to talk about sort of account for what we said we'd do against what we did do. So last year in the roadshows, which took place sort of September, October, November last year, what we said about the reviews was that each year we'd select a random sample of 10% of parents, randomly generated sample. We said we'd notify those selected, those parents or guardians selected early in the year, around about February or March. We said the reviews themselves would take place between April and October. We said those initial notifications would nominate a month, April, May, June, July. But if that month didn't suit, parents could nominate another month. We said that if parents homeschooled more than one child, they could select which child would be the subject of review. We said we'd develop resources in consultation with homeschoolers on the VHIAC to provide guidance to people and publish them on our website. We've done all that. So all that has happened. So without wanting to, I know this video isn't meant to be, you know, listening to some bureaucrat defending, saying, I kept my promise, like Avita or something, but we have done that. So this is a slide that was published last year. This is basically how it works. Early in the year, you get notified. You choose which type of review you want. So I'll go back to this terminology here: desktop, phone, and home visit. In a desktop review, desktop is a sort of review if you never want to see a VRQA officer face to face. What desktop means is that you, the parent or guardian, just gathers evidence of your education program and provides it through email or regular post, and we'll show samples of different types. Send it into the VRQA, we assess it, check that there's a learning program there that covers the 8 learning areas, and then we send you the outcome of the review, you know, in all cases so far, saying thank you, review's been successful. You understand what I mean? So it's a very kind of depersonalised way of doing it. But for parents and guardians, and probably just about everyone fits in this category, that are time poor, that have documentation to hand, because we're aware homeschoolers we've been dealing with have often not had any trouble just pulling together samples of what they've been doing. That's been quite an efficient way of doing it. And so maybe because of that efficiency, to date, and these are rough numbers, about 50% of people are selected for that type of review. Yes?
Comment that, Chris, that while you said it's depersonal, personally I don't see it as depersonal because I'll be probably having some photos as evidence, which is part of the email documentation. But also, I mean, I take great pride in my child's achievements, and even the work he does when we work together to get to that level. You know, I think people who do a desktop, it's not necessarily as depersonalised as you would just think. It's, you know, an investment in that kind of that work. I mean, you haven't got it face to face, we're not discussing it, but I would say that the work is
Yeah. No, fair enough comment. And I presume those at home weren't able to hear that question, so should I repeat it?
That would be good. I mean, future I'll pass around the mic if anyone
Yeah, okay. So the comment was that I used the term, it's a depersonal way of doing it. The comment was, well, actually, no. It can be, for the parent and the children involved, can be highly personal because there's a demonstration of what they're doing at home, and there's a lot of pride and achievement in this. Yeah, look, I accept it. I guess the limited sense of the term I was using it in is from our side, assessors. Yeah, depersonal, just purely from that. And I have to say, so I've personally been doing quite a number of desktop reviews. I think, as I said last year, we don't give an assessment. We're not very helpful at the VRQR. The regulations aren't very helpful. We'll tell you it meets the regulations, it does not meet the reg. That's what we'll tell you. But having said that, we've seen some absolutely brilliant material submitted through desktop review, which showcases what's possible through home education. Showcases, we're not going to put it on the website because it's highly personal information. But that's the point of having some of the samples from that being provided by some of the VHIAC members and so on who are happy to share. You can see resources that are, tremendous. Yeah, really. Yeah. So phone review, I guess by the nature of the terminology means some people would prefer to talk it through, but may not necessarily have time to come into the city or invite us out to where they are or whatever. So generally it's about a half an hour, 40-minute conversation, something like that. And the questions that we ask in that phone interview aren't surprising. They're all in relation to the regulations. They're questions such as, tell us what your general schedule is. You know, regular and efficient. What do you have a schedule? What's your general routine? Noting that there's no requirement to mimic what are the hours of a school or anything like that. Right, the 8 learning areas. You know, what do you do for English? What do you do? You know what I mean? And then we generally transcribe it and send it back to the homeschooling parent for information, or occasionally we might ask for just some follow-up, a few samples of work or something like that. So about 1 in 5 cases have been phone reviews. And we've also done a number of home visits already, which I haven't personally done, but I understand have all been great.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's also for people, I was joking last year, I wasn't anticipating too many people. Why would you want to invite a regulator into your home, you know? But some people really want to, and it's that pride. It's that pride and achievement, and it's been a privilege for people, from what Chris and others have been saying. You walk in and there's these learning resources on display, and it's talked through, and it becomes very clear very quickly that it's going to be a successful review. That makes sense? So I'll just move quickly on to the next slide. This is the sort of life cycle. We're into June now. We selected our 10%, completely random, in consultation with the VHIAC. A number of the 10% informed us that they weren't homeschooling anymore because people change. The average time in homeschooling is about 2 years in Victoria, just from the stats. So people come in and out of school, as you all know. So we've done 40. Within a month, we will have done 80 or 100 or something like that. And we'll eventually get up to maybe around about 250 or more by the end of October. The last thing I'll finish on, and It relates to my comment before about what we review, what are we looking for. And Chris will go through some of the sample materials and so on that will visually demonstrate it. But you can see the clear divide here. Under the regulations, we have to see that there's an education program in place that substantially addresses the learning areas. It's regular and efficient. What we don't review is stuff in relation to curriculum. We don't say, this child is 10 years old, the learning program should be covering this pursuant to the Victorian curriculum. We don't do that. Or the Australian curriculum, or any curriculum, right? We don't have a checklist, for example, which says English under the curriculum covers these 6 things, right? But the parents only provided evidence for 4, so we'll go back and ask about the other 2. Don't do that. It's not in the regulations. The quality of the education being delivered. What I mean here is that, I'll take them both together. The quality of the education being delivered and student progress or achievement. The regulations are about really what's done. It's about activity. Is there an education program in place? It is not about the regulator saying, provide me evidence that your child's learning journey has moved from point A up to point B. It's not about that. Is that understood? Any questions about that at this stage?
Yeah, I did.
We'll pass the mic around, just so those at home. Are you happy for people at home to hear your question?
It's more of a... Is that working? I'm not familiar with using microphones. I did come across that when you did an earlier video, and I struggled to understand that point, that you're not looking for progression or achievement, because you think one of the things you go in to homeschooling is so your child can do well, or that there's something you want them to achieve that maybe it's not happening in school. So that seems like it has to be a part of it. I mean, I'm sort of grateful that you're saying you're not going to be grading or doing some kind of progressive. But don't you show, if you're showing, you just have to show the work you're doing.
Correct.
Not that there's a progression.
Yeah. And look, without going into it too much, I think the logic behind it is people in home education, just like children in registered schools, will be in all sorts of different life circumstances, okay? Some might be, and I'll use inverted comments here, it's pejorative language, I don't like it, gifted learners. Some might have special learning needs. Some might have significant disabilities. And so for a regulator in central office to apply sort of one sort of standard across would perhaps unintentionally go against the ethos of the regulations and homeschooling, which is about the decisions that parents make that are in the best interests of the child that matters. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, sorry for my croaky voice too. We just had a few troubles. I'll be here for questions and so on, but I'm going to hand over to Chris O'Sullivan, who'll talk about the review process in more detail. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, so I'm Chris O'Sullivan. I'm the manager of the homeschooling team at the VRQA. Chris did do some introductions earlier, but I'll just let you know again, the majority of the team is with us here today. So Kelly, who is one of our senior officers and an authorised officer to conduct the reviews. We've also got Sarah and Marie, who help us out no end at home base in the office, and they can also accompany people out on some of those home visits as well. So you might get a chance to meet them. If you pick up the phone and call us at any time or send in an email, you could speak with any one of us. It's a bit of a lucky dip, so you'll probably have a chance to engage with every one of the team as you go through your registration period. So I am going to talk a little bit about the reviews in some detail, talking about some of the information that we're looking for in the reviews and how you can actually put your details together to meet the requirements. So the main focus of a review is to show that the requirements of registration have been met. If you are selected for review, we email you out the list of those requirements, everything that's covered in the regulations to say this is what it means to be registered for homeschooling. Some of those requirements you can meet simply by filling in the review confirmation form that we send out to families when they're selected for review. So at the bottom of that form, it asks you to update your contact details, and that's one of the requirements of registration. So little ones like that we can easily work with you to update as we go and tick that requirement off even before we've sat down for the review. The main focus of the review though is the key requirement that the student or the child is receiving instruction that substantially taken as a whole substantially covers those 8 learning areas. So that's the main thing that I'm going to focus on, that main requirement, and talking about how you can actually demonstrate that in the reviews. What I'll go through in the first few slides is looking at some of the samples and some of the resources we have on our website that can support you in gathering your information and also understanding the requirements. The first one I'll go through is a video that's been up on our website for a while now. A little animation, it's only about 2 minutes. You've probably all seen it if you've been on the website already. This just talks a little bit about the evidence that you can gather, or the information you can gather, where you can take it from and how you can put it together to form your review. So I'll just play it for us and then we can talk about it if we have any questions at the end.
So, you've been selected for review. This means you'll have to show us that you and your child have an educational program in place that's efficient, delivered regularly, and taken as a whole, substantially addresses the 8 learning areas. You can demonstrate your program through samples of your child's work that show learning across a range of learning areas. Schedules or planners supplemented with your reflections, photo evidence and work samples, and if you use an app or any digital recording, extracts with reflections, annotations, and examples of learning. We're not looking for a detailed account of your child's learning over an extended period. We're looking for a snapshot that shows how you and your child are covering the learning areas and that instruction is regular and efficient. So, how can you prepare for your review? First, keep records. The more you do this, the better prepared you are. Second, have evidence of your child's learning. Planning documents are useful, but they can't by themselves demonstrate that there's an educational program in place that, taken as a whole, covers the 8 learning areas. That's why examples of your child's learning are important. Third, select examples that tell us about your child's learning. Worksheets and photos of finished projects give limited insight into learning. Choose examples that are detailed, comprehensive, and demonstrate your child's full learning experience. There are plenty of examples of review resources created by Victorian homeschooling parents on the VRQA website. You could also check out your local home ed support groups. If you're still unsure about how to prepare for your review, contact us to discuss your options. The more you prepare, the easier it will be.
Okay, pretty short and sweet, but it gets some key information across to you, hopefully. Talking a bit about, again, what sort of information you can gather for the review, and you would have seen that there were icons there that represented photos, files, the actual learning activities that the child's completing. All of those things can be fine for you to be compiling in as part of your review. The key message from that one, you want to make sure that the information you're giving us shows that the learning areas, those 8 learning areas, are actually being addressed in the home as part of the learning plan. Okay, any questions about the review, about the video, sorry?
That's up on the website, is it?
It is up on the website, yes. It's been up there for a little while. I believe the heading on the tab is preparing for a review. If you click on that one, the video will just be on the main screen. Yeah, any other questions? Okay, so that video is just one part of the resources or supports that we have available, and it references some of the others, being the samples and examples of how you might actually construct or put together your review itself. So that's what I'm going to look at in the next bit. How to actually structure your review, get your information together in order to meet the requirements. Now, everyone on their seats should have these little packs. The PowerPoint presentation, there's printouts of all the slides in there, but then there's also some of the other resources and supports that we're about to talk through. So if you want to have those out in front of you, that could be good. So one thing that our website has is some example reviews, and these reviews have actually been completed by home educating families, members of the Home Education Advisory Committee, members of the Home Education Network, and so you know that it's actually stuff that parents have shown how they can put their information together. So hopefully, in all of the examples on our website, you'll be able to find one that might be suitable for you and for your circumstances at home. So you've got a few examples in your little folder. You've got 3 of them. First one I'll have a look at is called, on our website, it's Review Sample 1, if you're looking on our website, and it's the blog. So this blog provides a lot of information. You might look at it and think that there's quite a considerable amount of writing that you need to do. I would say this one is very detailed. You wouldn't necessarily need to give us that length of information for each of the days that's listed here, but it's just giving an indication here. So this blog is structured around each day, and the parent has written down examples of what they've actually done that day as a learning activity and the resources that they've used. The parent at the bottom has also gone into identifying the learning areas in those little blue boxes down the bottom. You don't need to do that, but it might be a good way for you, as you're putting your information together, to maybe mentally tick it off, to say, okay, I've given information about English, about maths, about science, and all those other learning areas. The parent has gone into a lot of information, and if you flick into the booklet, you can see that they've also included photographs of some of the activities that they're talking about in those details. And that's really good, because it takes it to that next step. They're not just giving us a written account of what's happened, they're actually showing us this is the activity that the child's completed. So that helps us understand in a bit more detail what's taking place. With those photos, you can choose to include them. You don't have to include photos of your children at all. It's probably better to just include photos of the work or of the activity itself. If you do include photos of your child, we'll look at them when we're assessing the review, but then we'll take them out of the official record when we're storing it at the VRQA. So we're not going to hold on to the photos of your child. But if you do include them, we will definitely take it into account when we're looking through the review.
That was a question I had. Because this is the first year of reviews, I was thinking maybe some of the ones that are handed in are going to be what you pay particular attention to as you're in reviewing your process of reviewing, and using examples and having these as something that's going to be passed around a bit more widely, because you want to say, this is what we got, this is how we want to continue with the review process. These are examples of good, these are examples of ones that could have been a little bit more detailed. I was wondering whether the ones that we put on just to represent our family and children are going to be more widely modelled. Yeah, yep. Because it's the first year and you're still working it out, or maybe not working it out, but...
No, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, we're learning as we go through this as well. It's a new process for everyone. Are we going to be distributing your review information?
Discussion on the review that I hand in?
Yeah, no, there won't be. So if you're selected for a review, when you submit your material, one of 4 people within the VRQA will be allocated to assess your review. So that's Chris, me, Kelly, or Emily, who couldn't be with us today. So those 4 people, one of them will have a look at it. We do a lot of moderation within the team to discuss to make sure that we are all assessing things in an equal and fair manner. But we don't spread it across the whole VRQA, so other people don't see it. We don't publish anything on the website. So at the moment, what we've got on there are these examples. And as I said at the start, these are ones that are created by home educating parents. So they're pretty representative of what we might receive or what might be happening or what might be appropriate in a home. We're not going to replace these with your child's work. There's no intention to put that up there.
My question is, I've got a teen who is willing to participate in review because in 2 years' time she said she won't be eligible for that. So my question is, for example, we're doing sports activities or something and I'm not able to make photos of her. How should I provide evidence in this case?
Sure, excellent. So if you look at these examples, not all of them have photographs attached to each learning area, and that's okay. We might just have your written details of what's taken place for HPE or for any other learning area. That can be fine. It sort of does just take it to the next level if you give us the photographic evidence. But if you don't have them for all cases, that's totally acceptable. You can also include information in any format. So some parents have given us USBs with videos on them. So if you choose to reflect a child's learning or activities in a video, you can send it in on a USB. Other families have actually sent us links to online sources like Dropbox, was it? And Google Docs and that sort of stuff. Some of them we can access, some of them we can't because of passwords and so on, but that might be another way to get around it if you're putting videos on there or something and we can have a look at it. Similarly, if you are really thorough and putting together a blog like this yourself online, you might just give us the link to that blog and we can just read it there. You don't have to send us anything separate. We can just go to the website or to the blog that you're doing. I know some families compile their own Facebook page, for example, of their homeschooling or home education. So you might just give us a link, we'll have a look there, and that could be it for the review. So it is very flexible, it is up to you. If you've got photos, great, maybe videos, links to a website, or just information. It is up to you. Okay, so this is one, the blog. It's a very detailed one, as I said, but it's a good way to show information about the activities and the resources, and it also highlights the regular and efficient instruction because of the dates. It's breaking stuff down into the dates and the order that they've occurred. The next one on our website, and again in your folders, is it's review number 2 on our website, and it's the report. This one is really good for those who are perhaps natural learners or unschooling, those who are following an integrated approach, because it doesn't have headings of English, maths, science and the learning underneath there. It groups it all together into activities. So the first activity on the example, museum membership, just talks about what the child has done in regards to the museum, gives us a photo to reflect that learning, and we can, in the authority, we can go through as we're assessing it and just say, okay, that relates to these learning areas. We can match it up to science or history, whatever it might be relevant in that information. So this one is another good one, again, an integrated approach for natural learning or unschooling families. The final example in your folder is a journal entry, parent journal with photographs. This one gives us lots and lots of information about the regular and efficient instruction, because we've got a page from a diary where on each day they've listed down the learning activities that they've completed. We've then also got more elaboration next to that with more specific detail about the activities and the resources that they've used. The parent again has kicked in extra detail by giving us photographs of some of those activities that they've mentioned above. And this parent has given us quite a few pages of that information. If you choose to do it this way, it would tick all the boxes, it meets the requirements. We're not going to tell you that you have to give us a month worth of diary entries. It's totally up to you. If you want to give us just the week of what's happening at that immediate time, that could be fine. Or if you are maybe gathering stuff throughout the year, and you might give us a week from June and maybe another week from August and so on. Totally up to you how you want to structure it and the date range that you want to put down in your review. Okay, so those 3 review samples or examples, they are on our website for those watching the video stream. They can get those from our website. There are some other examples on there as well. All of them are optional. Just trying to give you a bit of information, a bit of an idea about how you might structure your details together. The important thing to think about with whatever format you choose is to make sure that you are giving us those key details of regular and efficient instruction that substantially covers those learning areas. Okay, does anyone have any questions about those 3 examples that we've just looked through? Very briefly, look through.
My question isn't about the examples, but
Sure.
the way that I do mine is similar to the last one, where I type out the date and I write dot points with everything we've done, discussions, documentaries we might have done, outings, workbooks, etc. My computer died. I'm not up for review, so I'm not so stressed, but I lost the last 3 months of everything. What would happen in that case if I was up for review, and that's my way of documenting? I would have, like, let's say, entry slips to things that we've gone to, but I wouldn't have all my photos and my evidence. Would I
Sure.
be given an extension? Like, what would happen?
Well, for extensions, yes, we can be flexible with the dates. So when we first select families for a review, we nominate a month for them, and then the parents can decide if that month is suitable or can push it back to another time. So in effect, they can give themselves that extension there. But if you were selected for a review and you lost all your computer records, it's not the end of the world, because, as I said before, you don't have any set period that you have to provide information for. So we're not going to say to you, where's your year's worth of learning activities? If you lose your information and you can only compile details from that immediate week, then that's fine. That might be what your review focuses on.
The only issue with that is that week might not cover particular key learning areas.
If it doesn't cover all the key learning areas, we would then just say, we could ask you, what are you doing for those areas where you haven't given us information, and we can just get some details that way. Yeah, that's no problem. Okay.
In this case, the question about if... Oh my God. Sorry. Slightly bit worrying. May I ask a question a little bit later?
Okay, sure. Yeah, we'll come back to it.
I'll jump in with someone from home, if that's okay.
Sure.
So we have Alicia, and she's asking if she has her review at home, in a home meeting scenario, should she have everything printed up or have it on a USB for you to take back? Do you need to take physical evidence back to the office with you?
Okay, good question. In short, no, we don't. So I walked into a home, I was invited to a home the other day. Walked in, I could see learning resources around the home on the walls. They had piles of stuff ready for me to flick through and for them to talk me through. I was able to get a really clear indication of the learning plan just from being in that environment. I didn't take anything home with me because I could already see those details there. Some families, when they do invite us into the home, might have copies of some of their activities or maybe a copy of their journal page or something that they've got that they give to us. That's great because we'll add that to the record, but if you choose not to give us information, that's fine. What we will do when we come back to the office, as we're typing up the assessment, we would write a little summary of what we've observed and send that to the parent to say, this is what I've observed in your home, and asking whether the parent agrees, if they want to add any more details and so on. The parent would just simply respond. Most parents seem to respond and say, yep, that's what we talked about, and then that's it. So that's the information that we have here to say, okay, this is the record. So you don't always need to give us samples of the child's learning or anything like that. We can just have our written summary of what we observed and the parent agreeing with what we've done there.
What would be the benefit of If you're having a home visit and
Yeah.
you're coming and you're seeing everything, why would I need to give you a copy of something to take back then? What would be the
Some
benefit
parents
of
just
it?
have chosen to do that. You don't need to.
Okay.
You don't need to. It may even go back to the comment here about pride in the work. Some parents might just want to, show the activities that their child has completed and are happy to send them off with us. But you definitely don't need to. We don't walk in there and expect to be coming away with books or anything. Sure. You're right.
In terms of taking material away to, there are times when we're going to visits on public transport, and it would be better if, for privacy reasons, that we're not taking materials with us. So in that case, they can always be sent in, like Chris said. They can be sent in afterwards, or posted, or something like that. Yeah.
If you're choosing to send those things in.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And Sue, I think I saw you. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to add something about record keeping.
Sure.
Just that, in the instance mentioned where records may have been lost, that the legal requirement is that you're educating your child, substantially addressing the 8 learning areas and so on. Not that there are actually no legal requirements around record keeping. So records are useful in demonstrating that you are providing an education around the 8 learning areas, but the records themselves aren't actually, there's no legal requirement that you can that you have records. So
Correct.
there are other, you can write a report instead of having records.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So it is very flexible, and it is up to the parent. If any information basically that you want to share with us, you're welcome to do so. I might point out too, on a few of these examples, there's stuff on here that you don't need to tell us. So I know with this blog, at the top right here, they talk a little bit about their educational philosophy. You don't need to do that. You don't need to give us those details. Some of the review examples might discuss other children within the family. You don't need to do that. It's really just information about one child, the child that you nominate for the review. If you've got multiple children registered, you can just keep it focused on them. So if you see stuff here, don't think it's always compulsory. It's not. The photos, the details about philosophy, all of those things are your choice about what information you do want to share with us. Vera.
We have another question from Tennille, who's at home. And she said that earlier we mentioned that providing evidence in the form of work samples. She's asking, in the case of unschooling or children who don't complete worksheets or workbooks or activities, would photos of learning, such as outing, cooking, sports, experiments, etc., be sufficient? I guess just the photos, would they be sufficient, or...?
If that's how they want to demonstrate the learning, yes, it would be. I think perhaps the term work samples might be the incorrect term if we just say that it's an activity that the child's completing in the home. So it doesn't have to be a test or an assignment as they would complete in mainstream school. It could be anything. So it could be a photo, like we saw in the video, a photo of the pavlova that they've baked, and maybe a copy of something written that they've done as well. It's up to the parents. It's very flexible. Chris.
I was just going to add to that answer. Photos can be great, but if they come just with a little bit of annotation, that's very helpful. So if we just get a photo of the moon or something, and that's it, it doesn't really tell us much. We figure we have to extrapolate too much, or maybe there's some learning going on there about the solar system or something. But if there's just a few lines to annotate along with the photo, this is part of this learning activity. What we were learning about was the moon landing in '69 or something like that, then that's really helpful. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, another question here too.
I'm asking a question for a friend who was going to be here today, but she's
sure.
had problems with her car. And it's similar to a question that I asked at the roadshow last year. She's having an older child being reviewed who's getting right towards the end, the upper age limit, and her daughter is going to be taking a series of A-level exams, which is what my older son did, and he's finished now. In her case, she's focusing on those A-levels that she's doing, so it's not in a very balanced way, obviously covering the 8 learning areas because it's that upper high school thing. Should she be asking for an exemption for the areas where she's not really putting in the effort in that sort of a way, or should she be doing something in that area or some sort of explanation? What would be the general approach? Because this is what she would have more or less done had she been at school anyway.
Yeah, sure. I might take this.
Sure.
Yeah. Is my memory right? Was this at the
It was
at the East Malvern session?
Yes, and I asked the question, but this is very good. But it's my son that I was asking it about. He's 19, so he's not.
Yeah.
He's not relevant anymore. But it is a friend of mine.
Yeah. Okay. No, I understand. The answer to the question is that there is no need to apply for any type of exemption, and certainly nor is there a need to go outside of the A-level program or whatever it's called and start doing
Token acts of geography, if that's not
token
your...
acts of geography. So again, this is in documentation that's on the website, and it applies to reviews and also applications to homeschool as well. It's the same. Is that it's perfectly... the key word, it depends on the individual circumstances of the child. So children that go to registered schools, as they get into senior secondary, the education program narrows, and in most cases they don't cover all 8 learning areas, and that's fine. The same with homeschooling. So all it would be, if that parent was subject of a review, would be either over the phone or desktop saying, hey, we're doing the A-levels, therefore we're doing 5 of the 8, not the other 3. So there. And their response will be, good, that's fine. Yeah, but certainly, definitely not artificial token because of wording of 8 learning areas or anything like that. Definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not.
And then my second question relates to me. We're homeschooling at the moment because we've come over here on a temporary assignment from the UK, and it's more straightforward to homeschool and stay in sync with the UK system. There's a 50-50 chance that we might be going back to the UK in the month that we're doing our review. That depends on sort of external things to do with my husband's work and so forth. If that happens, presumably we just still do the review anyway and tell you that we're not going to be there after that if we have booked aeroplane tickets and the like, or are you still
We would ring
interested?
Interpol to track you down. No. Look, I think we would just take a practical approach. If you're leaving the country to go back to the UK permanently or semi-permanently, then we just wouldn't do the review. If you were visiting but were intending to come back, we'd probably reschedule it or something like that.
I mean, our house and everything is over there. This is the temporary bit, and that's why we're doing the homeschooling.
Right. But just so long as you're not fleeing the country out of worries about homeschooling review. Look, we would just take a practical approach to it. And an illustration of this is that in a number of cases, out of the 10% that we initially contacted, a number got back to us and said, quite a number, actually we're no longer homeschooling. When we ticked the form that we were continuing, we thought we might be, but we're not, because sometimes parents know we ask in October or whatever it is, November, whether they intend to continue, and parents can be 50-50, not sure, depends what happens, that sort of stuff. So yeah, we're not unused to those sorts of contingencies.
Yeah.
So, and of course, even if you didn't tell us and just left the country,
Yeah.
that would be the end of the review.
What we do in the team, so the reviews, when the parent returns a confirmation form and advises what month is best for them to conduct the review, the month prior to that nominated month, the reviews are allocated and we start making contacts with the parents to lock in the specific details. So if it's a face-to-face review, we nominate the exact date and time and so on. Same for telephones. So at the moment, we're currently contacting July reviews to confirm things and lock things in for them. So in your case, we will be contacting you the month before your nominated month. And you might be telling us then, oh, okay, it's definitely happening. We're definitely moving back to the UK. We'd know by then,
definitely,
yeah. Okay, so you could just let us know, and based on the circumstances, we might just decide to not go ahead with it if you're going to be on the other side of the world. Yep. Okay, yes.
I have seen a lot of your examples of
Brilliant.
the evidence, what you've given out. They've been beautiful, and the parents who've done those examples and tried to guide us, just thank you very much, and I think they're beautiful, so they put a lot of work into it. But they've also noticed, and I've got them off the website, just a template, structured templates, and they're just so basic compared to what you're asking. Do they suffice? I mean, if you...
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, those templates that you have said you could fill out and return, well, it seems a bit easier, to be honest, than what is up there as an example, and could these do for the review?
So those templates that you've got there, those are for the learning plans, and so parents might choose to use those at application time. You could always choose to do that as part of your review as well. If you wanted to, tell us what your plans are for the next registration period. Well, these examples here are sort of in place of a template. You might choose to just There is actually a review template, yes, of course. So, yeah, there are in another section. So those would be in the application section, in the review section, and then there's a review resources tab on our website, and that's where you've got the examples and the templates. Yes.
So I'm an older student, so I'm up for review, and I was wondering, I have a key, like I have an area I want to have my career in, and let's say can I make that like the key point of the review? Let's say my interest area is arts. Can I base most of the review on what I've done or will be doing?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the same as would happen in mainstream school, as students get towards senior, they choose the subjects and they don't choose the subjects that are not related to their career. So the same thing for us. Yes, absolutely. And you might just simply tell us that, as you just did then. I'm aiming for this as a career, and if it's arts, so therefore I'm not doing these learning areas, and we would just say, all good.
I just thought we had one question that was put in prior to today's session, so I thought I'd just address it now. And I'll read it out. My 13-year-old daughter uses a school program by Complete Education Australia. They use an Australian curriculum and claim that they fulfil all the VRQA requirements. My question is, do you know if that is correct? If we follow the Complete Education Australia curriculum, will we comply with all the VRQA requirements? The way of answering that is, well, typical bureaucrats answer, neither yes or no. It's not about whether you've purchased a program or haven't purchased a program, or you're highly structured or highly unstructured. It's about what you do. So, for example, if you've purchased a curriculum which is tremendous set of learning resources and it covers the Australian curriculum, and it sits on your shelf at home, and there's no learning taking place at home, the fact that you've got that subscription is not going to help you. But maybe it will help the parent if they use it to construct an education program. That's my roundabout way of saying that these regulations, they're about activity, what you do, not what curriculum you've purchased or what educational philosophy you adopt or don't adopt. Question?
Then, can you describe, based on the 40 reviews you've done so far, what were the kind of things that were concerns that you had with some of them that might have been marginal? What were the sort of things that were red flags where you thought, not sure about this, but you ended up in the end passing it anyway?
So I don't think there have been many in that category, but what I'd classify it as is lack of information. That's all. What does a regulator do in our circumstances? We've got it's a glamorous job. We've got our regulations which say, is there evidence of that? And all we do is try and find evidence of something. Can we see evidence of an education program? Is it regular and efficient in some way, shape or form? Is it covering, what are they doing for these different learning areas? If we're struggling to get an answer out of the parent, then we go back and ask a second or third time. It's the lack of information. So there's no patterns or trends that says people that follow this type of educational philosophy have struggled to meet. That's not the case at all. It's purely around, it gets back to what Sue White was saying before. There's nothing in the law about saying you have to keep records, like their tax records in a business, you have to keep them for 7 years. So there's nothing in the law that says that. The reason we suggest it is that it helps us as regulators. It helps us help you, to use the Jerry Maguire line. Is that the more information you have at our disposal, the easier for us to go, yep, tick, move on. Does that make sense?
Yep. And I might just quickly say too, because we allocate a review to one of the four of us who are conducting the reviews, if that specific officer has any concerns, we do have moderation a lot of the time to get together to discuss it. And while they might have concerns, another person might look at it and say, oh, actually, I think it does meet all requirements and so on. So we do get consistency across the board. And so in that way, we can work through a few of those issues that we might have. Okay.
Could you possibly, again, just offer some reassurance to parents and guardians who some are a bit concerned that they have to cover certain things under a KLA. So one recent example was someone saying, oh, you know, I'm really worried because my son doesn't want to do music lessons. Does that mean we're not going to pass the arts aspect? So, if you can just offer some reassurance.
Yeah, sure. I'll take this one. Sure. If anyone can jump in. I can certainly offer that reassurance. The same with applications or reviews. The key point is, it is not a requirement on parents and guardians to guarantee that they are covering all 8 learning areas all the time. It is not. The wording is much more general than that. It's substantially taken as a whole. So that means that there's room for circumstances where people are getting older, they're not covering all 8, maybe covering 5. That means it's quite common. So far, we're talking about a different process, but we've noted from application process and exemptions, about 1 in 8 people apply for an exemptions for learning areas, and quite often that's languages. That's fine if you want to apply for exemption for languages. So in other words, in substantially taken as a whole is just sort of a much more general concept, which means that you can construct a learning program that is suitable for your child without covering all 8. It still meets the regulations. It's not a very precise explanation. But my assurance is, again, we're already doing it. In applications, we've had hundreds of applications and about 30 or 40 with exemptions. Every exemption's been approved. In learning reviews, I've personally done several where not all 8 have been covered, and the conversation with a parent just sort of explains why. Fine, move on.
I just wanted to add to the reassurance by saying that if, more often than not, if there's ever an example that we have on a on our website or on our learning plan templates or samples, that's what they are. They're just examples, and parents are still free to choose whatever whatever activities, subject matter they want to put into their educational program. We just try to offer examples because there are a lot of parents who aren't sure where to start. So if you see something like science and in brackets it says example, biology, physics, chemistry, you do not have to cover all of biology, chemistry and physics.
Any other questions about the...
I'll jump in for some questions from people at home. We're having questions about younger students. Mm-hmm. So Carrie and Alicia are asking, say, prep to grade 3 equivalent. Are they expected to cover all 8 learning areas as well?
No, so
one question in particular is, would she be able to focus, say, on just maths and English of the learning areas?
And is this for the review or
for the review?
Yeah. So it'd be the same as for students at the other end of the schooling life. So no, they wouldn't need to be giving us information about all 8 learning areas, and they could just very easily explain it as you've done there, to say, because of my child's age, we're focusing on these to develop those foundation skills, and that's fine.
But also we've become very aware, and homeschoolers have always been aware, even when people say, I'm focusing on maths and English, the way in which they go about it tends to cover other learning areas as well. So I'm only focusing on English. Oh, how are you doing it? Well, we're going online and we're focusing, okay, there's ICT. How are you doing it? Well, we did this artwork and has to describe, okay, all right. How are you doing it? Oh, he's done his own comic. Okay, there's a bit of design, there's a bit of this, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, and again, there's resources up on how the integrated approach, a single learning activity can sometimes cover 5, 6 or 7 of the learning areas.
Okay, I might go back to this very quickly. So those examples, they are on our website again. The examples have got little yellow speech bubbles all over them. So those bubbles have been written by the VRQA team who are actually assessing the reviews. So that just gives information about why it's really good, what else might be included in some of those examples and so on. So it's maybe useful to have a look at that stuff for some more ideas and some more prompts from the assessors. And also, regardless of what review method you choose, those samples, examples and templates may be useful for you just to get your own ideas together. Even if you're having a phone conversation or a face-to-face meeting, you might choose to jump on there, have a look at some of the stuff and just use that to compile your information yourself, even if you don't send it to us. It's maybe just an idea. Okay, so as we go through and actually assess the material that you send in to us, again, it's the 4 of us in-house who are doing those assessments. We are just looking for the facts of the information, the details that are happening in the learning areas and the resources that you're using. We're not looking anywhere in these documents for anything about achievement or quality or anything like that. Just looking for the facts of what learning's taken place. Once we complete an assessment, there's 2 potential outcomes. So we can either send you a notice to confirm that the requirements of registration have been met and no further action is required. And that notice is this example here on the side. Very, very short and sweet, not exactly full of information there. it just says the bare minimum. It says you've met the requirements, over to you. It also emphasises the fact that because you've been reviewed this year, you won't be reviewed for the next 2 years. So that's the notice outcome if you've met the requirements. The second potential outcome of an assessment is that we might contact you to say, we haven't got all the information yet to show that the requirements of registration have been met, and it will give you some options to address the concerns that we would put down in that notice. So if we say that we haven't got enough information for the learning areas to show that the child's receiving content that substantially addresses the learning areas, we would put that down in writing. You'll be able to get back further information, and you have some options outlined in that notice for you. We will get that notice out to you as soon as possible. Now, I know that in some cases we haven't always been as quick as we would like, and it's definitely something that we're working on to improve. So we are trying to come up with strategies to get things through as quickly as we can. Please just continue on with your homeschooling once you've submitted your review. Your registration's still in place. We're going through the review and we're completing the assessment as soon as we can. We will be back in touch with you once that assessment is finalised. And that is the last slide. Okay, that was good timing. Okay, so any other questions?
So I think what we might do is, so this video is going to be up on the VRQA. We're also going to do a transcription. Yep. So in text form. And if there are any questions that we haven't answered, no, there aren't. Okay, that's good. So the transcription will do the Q&A as well. But look, hey, this is just an information session. Don't feel that you can't ask any questions anymore. At any time, email, ring us. For those here who are present, stick around for a chat if you want to. But thanks a lot for coming. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Cheers.